The question we're asking today is Britain really racist? There's been plenty talks in the media, especially post, dare I say, the B word, Brexit. Hate crime has gone up. But amongst the ethnic minorities, especially the black communities, there's always this discussion going on behind closed doors in barbershops. If you go to the hairdressers, you name it, among black people. Today, we're going to be honest and have a serious discussion at the same time, speaking from the other side as well. And to help us to discuss today's topic, we have Jennifer Anafi-Acquah. She's here, and also Moses Bentum. Guys, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
As you can tell, they got the memo. I didn't.
Always representing.
Let me come to you first, Jennifer.
Right. Hello.
With that topic, is Britain really racist?
Wow, that's a really big question. I think I would say yes, but I think it's quite difficult to kind of quantify. Yes, I do think that Britain is still racist. I think when you say that question, it's quite scary, because what part of Britain do you mean? Do you mean, is it still institutionally racist? Do you mean it's sort of are the people that live here sort of racist? I guess overall I'd have to say yes, but with a caveat, in that there are things being done. It's not as racist as it used to be, sort of in history, but we're also not all the way there yet. We're not living in a society where I can say there is 100% no racism and no decision in government, in education is affected by race. I don't think we're there yet.
Moses?
Is Britain racist? I think Britain is racist. So the answer would just be yes. I'm not going to go in and out and say, oh, this, that, and the other. The reasons I'm saying that is because if we look at the definition of racism, I think we should check it, because I don't even want to get it wrong.
Go on.
But I think it is suppressing another race, basically. And even the word race is actually racist, because it comes from the Spanish Inquisition in like the 16th century, and then also in eugenics, because they were doing different types of, I think you're going to read the definition.
Go on.
Different types
You're right on track, so I will not interject yet.
They were saying different types of human race. So you had the Mongoloid, the Negroid, the Caucasoid, and that's where the word Caucasian came from.
Yeah.
And that eugenic system started Hitler on his track to kill the Jews, etc., etc. So the word in itself, racism, is racist, one, or discriminatory, and then two, if I'm right on the definition, to suppress another race, I feel like the original British in this country have suppressed a lot of other ethnic minorities that have moved into this country, from Jews to Black to Asians, even to the Poles and Romanians. And the reason why you might say that's not racist is because they're not a different race. But as I said to you, the definition of race in itself and the word race is not the right word. We're different ethnicities. There's only one race, and that's the human race.
Right.
So
but see, I think we may have the same underlining answer, which is yes. But in terms of what you're saying and that people groups being categorized, I'm literally just saying, say if there was a mixture of a fruit bowl and there were bananas and oranges and apples, putting bananas with banana, like it's in just saying categories for these things. Is that in itself racist, or is what then the application of what happens once you place them in these groups? That's actually the racist thing. Because at the end of the day, you are Black. You can then be subcategorized to being Black of African origin, or subcategorized being Black of Caribbean origin. That classification itself is not racist. It's just placing a marker on
where you're from and your cultural background. Exactly.
So that in itself is racist. But the application, if I then were to make inferences about Black African are so-and-so, or Black Caribbean are so-and-so, and those things were disparaging and negative, that caused the suppression of that group, that is then racist. But then just the category alone cannot be racist.
But the reason why I was saying the category alone is racist is because exactly what you said on your second point is what happened. And also, even in the inception of making the categories, they were segregating humanity, saying that there's this type of human and this type of human. So it's not even ethnicities. Ethnicities is what you said in your first comment or point, which is ethnicities. And that in itself is not racist. No. If you say someone is from Brazil, they're from Brazil. Yeah. But if you're saying they're from Brazil and their head shape is like this, so therefore their IQ is like this, which was your second point, and that's what it was. And that's where I think it was, I don't think it was the 18th or 19th century, it was the Victorian era where this scientist came up with these categories of human. Right. So it's like different species. So then it separates us. And even in the slave trade in the Americas and in Europe and stuff, they use this to justify some of the things that they did to black people. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to say, that this thought in itself is suppressing another set of people.
In terms of in-your-face racism, I think the way that I see it, so particularly in my industry, I work within the media, and I think it's not necessarily in-your-face racism, but it's the racism where it's almost like the lack of people like me being there hits you in the face. And it's difficult to say that because no one's doing anything racist. No one's saying, N-word this or, no one is, that's not happening whatsoever. I have had an incredible experience, working in television. However, it's the fact that in the many productions I've worked in, I have either been the only person of color altogether, so nobody else of color, or I've been the only black person. There was maybe an Asian, but in teams
tokenism,
teams of maybe 30 in the office, or in teams of maybe 50 on a shoot, things like that. When you notice that you are one of very few, or you are the only one on your project, it does bring to question, where is everybody? Did nobody else get the memo today? And it's really weird, because then when you then enter an office space, you enter a workspace where you meet another person that is black or that is ethnic, you get this rush of excitement, like, there's two of us now. You click and
you just said something that I'm going to pick up on when you finish.
And sometimes I think it's so complicated in the sense that sometimes I feel like I have to check myself if I meet an office space and I meet another black person and we click so well. And on the first surface of it, to other people who are not black or not of a minority, an ethnic minority, it seems like, well, that girl only started yesterday. How comes they're already going out to lunch? And she never and it feels like, it's because she's black. But it's not necessarily just because it's because she understands the struggle of what I'm feeling, that I can't always explain and express in words to somebody who doesn't. There's a difference between explaining something into words and then somebody feeling your struggle and you not having to explain it in so many words.
And understanding your struggle.
Understand that.
I get
and
that,
that's
Jennifer.
the thing that you click with. Yeah. So for me, in terms of the racism, it really is more the fact that it's a lack thereof of people like me who look like me, and the fact that I had to find my way in literally through a BAME initiative which obviously, proves that it worked because I got in, but there just isn't enough.
With the BAME initiative, can you expand on that?
So the BAME initiative that I went through, I worked with a very lovely, who I'm so, honoured to call my friend, as well as somebody that I've worked with in the past, a woman called Joanna Abiyayi, and she had...
Oh, Joanna, yeah.
Honestly, I can probably tell you that if not everybody, at least 90% of black people in media probably know.
And that's
Joanna.
what her business does.
Her business was to get more diversity within media. At the time that I knew her, I think it's expanded to other industries. But she put me forward for an interview at a television company, a job that I would have never known otherwise. And I went for the interview. I got it. I'd like to think that I got it on my own merit, not just because I was BAME. But anyway, and that literally kicked off for me my career, and my career in television at least. So that's how I got in. And then once I was in television, speaking to other people who were in it, not black people, and I was like, when did you start? It just seemed like such an easier process, or it seemed like a process that didn't have to involve an organisation that had to get you in. Right. So I was like, okay, well, that's good for you. I mean, I'm glad you're in.
But it took a whole organisation and a machine to get you in.
To get me in, whereas... And it's because the industry, and I'm sure many other industries, are set up in a system where this is where I think part of the racism is so delicate that people won't overtly see that it's racism. Media is one of those, people always laugh and joke about it's a very middle class industry. because a lot of the majority of how people get in is you kind of start doing work experience.
Yeah.
You intern.
You intern. You do a lot of work for free, or the work that you do is maybe your lunch is covered, maybe your travel is covered. In order to kind of be able to give your time and that much of your time away freely and not be paid for it, you have to have the basics covered. You have to be living somewhere that someone else can pay your rent, you know, making sure that your food at home is covered, things like that. So usually that just means that you come from either a family or a home setting where those things are taken care of. And a lot of the times, people who come from more affluent homes, that's not just to say white people, but just people who come from more affluent homes.
Majority being white people,
can afford to have their kids do those things because you don't have to contribute, you don't have to pay bills, you don't have to get a job. And that's how you get your step in. And then there's the other angle of where TV is a very who you know business. So if you don't know anybody in it,
quite literally.
If you don't know anybody in it who can help you, you know, maybe secure, which again, for me, I utilize that in that whole process of Joanna's network and Joanna's, and she had to obviously pave that way for me to get in it. But if you don't have a mum who's next, or your next door neighbor, or an aunt who's an exec somewhere, or who's a manager somewhere in a TV, it's very difficult as
it's
a
true.
newbie to get
It's true
in.
because I went to one of the mainstream televisions here, just shadowed for a couple of days, and then who the producer I was sitting with, I said, just conversation. I said, oh, so how long have you been here? She's like, oh, I've been here for about 5 years. Okay, so how did you start then? My mum used to work here. So, you know what I mean? I'm thinking, okay, so you're able to get your foot in the door.
I've experienced so much racism. I can't even. But a funny story, a funny little anecdote. When I was younger, about 8 years old, I was sitting with my mum in the living room, and I was like, Mum, like racism doesn't exist anymore, does it? I was like, because I don't experience any racism.
Young and naive.
That's exactly. And she was like to me, you wait. And even then I knew what racism was, obviously, because it had been discussed in schools. From university, workplace, outside, I've experienced a myriad of racism. Even when I'm walking on the road, a lady might put her bag on the other side.
Right.
That's happened to me before. And I don't look like...
No, like, but hang on. See, this is why I think it's good that we're having this discussion, but we also need to be really, really honest.
Yeah.
I'm being honest.
But then in that instance, I don't think somebody seeing, I don't know, I could see a white person, a white woman.
Yeah, it may be that you're male, you are of a built stature
that
I'm a normal person.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let me put this out there. So to you, you're a normal person. I remember a few years ago, I was stopped by police in Brixton.
Yeah.
I was coming back from football training. I was tired. I wasn't dressed shabbily or anything.
Yeah.
And then I actually walked past the police, man.
Yeah.
And then a few minutes later, I was rushed. You fit
By
the
who?
description. By the police.
Oh, wow.
You fit the description.
Wow.
Yeah. Pushed me against the wall. And I was thinking, hang on, like, mate, I don't look like a criminal. Okay, I don't look like a criminal. I'm not a criminal.
Yeah.
But to them, I look like a criminal. In that instance, to me, I actually said to the guy, mate, you're doing this because I'm black.
Yeah.
And he said, don't try.
Use that black card.
Yeah, that race card, because that ain't going to work. But I want us to differentiate, okay, from the perception that somebody might have
of you,
of us, to what we've actually experienced.
To know that they're doing it because
that was racist.
I understand what you're saying.
Because I get what you're saying there with the police and everything, where it was, but at the end of the day, there was loads of other people walking past. So why was it just when I walked past and there was other men walking past?
Okay.
Right, okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Fine.
So it's not like, I don't walk in dark alleys. I don't do that. I don't trust people like that. So do you see what I mean? So even on the train, sometimes it happens as well.
Yeah.
And I even move my bag. I'm like, me too. I don't trust you either. Because you came to my country and stole all my people. So I don't know.
Shots fired already.
And I don't care, because that's another thing, the vilification of us on the way we look in this country as well is another thing, because it's like, just because you're black, they assume certain things about you. The assumption of, oh, he's doing fraud, drug dealer, or he's up to no good.
I just want to come back to this. Do you feel, as a black person in Britain, wherever you find yourself, you have to work twice as hard?
Yes. Everywhere. From school, work, walking on the street. I have to walk a certain way so I don't get perceived a certain way.
Yeah.
In school, for example, I'll never forget this. We had a teacher, Mrs. Lawe. She was from Sierra Leone. And I was a bit of a class clown, let's just put it that way. Okay. So I was just making noise. But obviously I was going on my work because I had my African mum at home and she needed to see those grades.
Yeah.
So basically, and one day she called me over and she goes, you know that it's different for you. I was like, yeah, 8 at this time. She's like, it's different for you. And I was like, what do you mean it's different for me? And she goes, because you're black.
Yeah, no, I had a history teacher that said the same thing. And I think you do have to work harder. And I think this is something obviously I'm sure you had, I'm sure you had your parents instill in you from such a young age.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even remember that first conversation. I just feel like I've always grown up knowing
you got to work hard.
I've got to work harder, and I've got to.
And there's certain things you can't get away with, but people that are indigenous to this country can get away with.
And can coast. You know, there's like a running joke among me and my friends that there are certain people that can coast through, you know, like
life.
white people that can coast through life, middle management, or like literally being C average students and still earn more than you, haven't been an A+ student your whole life. And it's just that struggle is there. And I think a lot of people, and I think this is quite people who don't experience racism, so people who aren't ethnic, always want to say it's a fair opportunity. You just have to work hard to get.
They don't understand it. They don't see it
because
they're not in it the way we're in it.
And that's my next question. You think people don't understand racism? Because again, we've spoken about overt racism. I'm not talking about the N-word. Whatever. We know that it's racism, but why is it that in terms of the Jewish community, there's a definition for anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
When it comes to black people, the definition only stops at the N-word.
Because I think that's what people can grasp, because that's what people can see is the visceral reaction of, oh my gosh, you said the N-word.
And that's racist.
And that's racist. Or, oh my gosh, you said black people are less intelligent, and that's racist. Like, people can only seem to grasp the sort of the in-your-face type of racism, the type of racism that, you know, is experienced in football stadiums and things. That's like, people find it harder to, and this goes for lots of different things in life, not just racism. People find it harder to understand and to deal with things like institutional racism or racism within the justice system or racism within the education system, because and this is exactly why they were created, that it's so embedded within a system that you can't even see it unless you experience it.
And it's used to suppress you in moving forward.
And it's worked, obviously, because outside in, it's like if I said to you, my arm got chopped off, you can see physically I have no arm. Yeah. But if I said to you, I have a blood disease, you can't see
my arm is falling off. You can't
systemic.
See it. Yeah.
You can't see, you can only see if there is an outward kind of symptom of it. That's the only way you can diagnose it. And you can't see my system. So for something like, you know, racism within the justice system, racism, you know, institutional racism, people who don't experience, and that even goes for some black people as well. If you don't experience it, and especially kind of some, you know, and again, some white people and some Asian people, if you don't experience it, or if it's not negative to you, it's hard to be like, I know it's there somewhere. I know somewhere within that system is unfair to you.
I even said that I don't even want to have my kids in this country because of the systemic racism, because the psyche of it. And when I see a lot of black people get affected by it, because a lot of black people in this country, I'm going to talk about black because that's our experience. Obviously, Asians have it as well. Other minorities have it as well.
You can't talk on behalf of them.
Yeah. The psyche of the black man and woman in this country is like, a lot of them is like degraded. It's like, we're not as good. And sometimes I pick it up in conversations. You won't know, they'll never say, oh, like I'm black and I'm proud, But there's certain things like, oh, that's what white people do. Oh, we don't do that. What you said about you getting an interview at
my first
your first media job, and there wasn't a lot of black people. It's because a lot of black people's psyche don't think they can make it there, or they try to make it there and they can't. Let me just say this.
That's just a whole black thing. That could be an individual thing. I've never felt like I'm so beaten down by the man in this country.
Can I just say something? Jennifer, that's you.
No,
I said the black psyche. I've experienced, like, obviously I work in social housing, the asylum seekers, as I told you, and I've seen so many of them thinking, let me just do this to get this. I don't want the stress. Even I said it myself just now when I said I didn't want the stress of going through that. Yeah. And when I'm in like a predominantly black country, my psyche, in a way, like I've educated myself in a lot of black history and So I know a lot about myself, and I can't it's not easy to sway me. But when I'm in a black country, for example, the psyche is different because you're seen as the norm. Even when the African Americans went back to the year, when they went back to the year of return, they were like, I just feel at home.
No,
I feel like I can breathe.
Because everyone you see,
it
looks like
no,
you.
but it's not even just the seeing; it's the relating as well.
Absolutely.
And then that's what I'm trying to say. But that's what I'm trying to say. So
you are the norm, not
that's
the
what I'm
other.
trying to say. So in this case, we are the other, but we're also the other and being suppressed as the other. In many ways, when you went to your workplace, there was just you, right?
Yeah.
And another black person.
Right.
I worked at Google for a while. I contracted at Google for a while. The whole skyscraper, up and down, there was one black person in development. Yeah. Right? I was in presentation and marketing at the time on that contract. And I was the only black person there. Yeah. When a lot of black... There was another floor which had a black manager and her team had 3 black people in it. Yeah. And that's the Google building. There's about 200 workers in there. I could pinpoint.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
And if I was to use the statistics of the population in this country and say, oh, we are 1.2%. Yeah. So is this office of 200 people? Is that exactly?
Okay.
It's not.
Yeah.
No, all right. Let me come in there because
that's clear suppression.
I remember a few years ago. This was when I was still playing football, and I think you can probably still see it now because I was up in the sticks, up in Kent.
Yeah.
And
Kent. The sticks. And some of us live in Kent.
No, back then, listen. When I'm talking about Kent, this is Gillingham.
Yeah. Oh, okay. The sticks. I get it now. I get it.
Well, it's much more developed now, I think.
Yeah.
And I remember. I was the only black player in the youth team at the time. Obviously, in the first team, they had a few black players. And the first thing you do is, as soon as you get there, like he was saying, you click. Yeah. You click. And that used to baffle me because I'm like, look, I'm from Brixton. Yeah. When I come to Brixton and I see another black man,
you're not
if I look at them,
it's a whole issue.
It's a whole different game. And that never used to sit right with me. But then when we're outside our own comfort zone and we meet somewhere else, we click. Yeah. And I remember we even used to have games where, black versus whites. Do you know what I mean? And certain managers just could not understand how black people, when you go to football teams, they just click. And we all used to just hang around,
for survival.
Jokes.
It's for survival.
I think it's also a thing because this is something that, again, I talk about with a lot of my friends, and I'm sure as black people, a lot of black people have the same feeling. It's this weird thing because there's loads of the memes about it online as well, where I love my industry, I love my work, I love the people that I've worked with. I can only say that I've had such a great time in media so far, and no matter how, and I've made some great friends. However, the minute I get home or the minute that I leave a work confinement or work party or something like that, and I get home and I talk to my partner or I'm with my girls, it's like a different face comes on.
Does that mean
I'm like,
does that mean you act? Did you feel like you have to act differently when you're at work?
Really
this is what the psyche. I told you.
No, I agree with you in that one because I hate the fact that it does happen, but I think it's very true. It's this thing of like, so as a black woman, I have felt, and this is not just in my current job at school, I have always felt, and sometimes have been made to feel externally, that I am representative of all black women.
Exactly.
And therefore I have to, and for me, I take that burden to be like, I have to be the best version, the best representative of black women because if
that ever existed in the history of man.
If this white person has a bad experience with me, or I do something, or I show off some sort of aggression, or they take that to be like,
That's just black people being angry again.
I guess black women are just aggressive then. Yeah. And I take that very, and I mean, some people might say that that's just paranoia, but I've had experiences where I've had people being like, oh, the other girl that I met, because as soon as sometimes you meet a group of white people, some white people, and they look and they're like, they instantly want to connect with you by saying the other black person that they know. They kind of instantly want to be like, oh, I worked with another girl that came from Ghana. Or I worked with another girl. I worked with another girl that was black that had your hair. And it's like,
and then it's like,
wait, they said that had your hair.
Well, yeah,
I've never heard that.
I don't meet other white people and be like, let me remember that other white person.
Yeah, see?
Because I know that my other friend Jenny is not the same as you.
This might sound a bit controversial, okay? But what's the population of the UK? I think
70 million or 60 million.
66 million.
Yeah.
And I'll try and get the stats out in terms of percentage.
Because I know Asian,
ethnic minorities.
South Asians are the next one, then it's black.
Then
and
it's
then
black,
Okay. And we're always talking about misrepresentation of black people in the boardrooms and what have you not. If in terms of if we're going by population. And there isn't, compared to, our white counterparts, of course, there's more of them than there is of us.
Yeah.
How do we expect them to understand racism? And secondly, how do we expect ethnic minorities or black people to get to the top where we can feel we are included?
We feel okay, like we feel safe. Like when you went to the football and you connected straight away with that person.
How do you get that
Number
feeling
one,
outside of your race and within boardrooms
and all that stuff?
Yeah. Again, we look at the population, there isn't that much of us.
Yeah.
No,
there isn't that much of us.
There isn't.
But there isn't that much Jews either. Do you know in this country there's 250,000 Jews, right?
But in terms of proportionality, to say the financial, like the FTSE like 500 in terms of companies,
they're ruling.
It's disproportionate to the numbers.
And whose fault is that then?
As in, nobody's fault.
Nobody's fault.
No,
because yours. No. Let me just say this. No, you're gonna say. I know what you're gonna say.
I know what you're gonna say.
We should have more businesses that hire more black people and include other people as well.
Our own in order to get there.
But with the Jewish people, number one, they've been in this system a bit longer than us. So that's the first one. Because when they came, they were living in ghettos as well. The word ghetto even comes from Jewish people living in ghettos, like Hackney and all that stuff in those times.
Yeah.
And that was the first generation of Jews. And what they did was menial work, like laundrettes, cleaning, etc., built up the money and then used it and invested in properties and in land and in education, etc. And then the next generation came in so they could get hired straight away because obviously, exactly. And then also their school system, as we know, they have their own schools and their money circulates generally within themselves.
Within the community,
so it was actually a strategy to get them to the top.
Okay.
And they are part of the top in this country because a third of the GDP is owned by Jews, and there's only 250,000 of them.
Okay.
So,
I'll let you finish.
So the fact of the matter is they had a strategy. Now, when the Jamaicans came in the Windrush generation, a lot of them came for like nursing jobs and clerk jobs.
Well, they didn't come. They were brought. They were invited over.
They were invited over.
They didn't just come.
No, but then they also had a choice to come. Because they didn't have to.
No, but that wasn't. What I'm saying is that they didn't just out of one day just be like, oh, I'm going to go to this England. They were invited over.
They were invited.
And then took that invitation and said, yes,
as the
come over.
Of the British colony.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's
they were invited over to come and.
Jennifer, that's true. Next.
Put the point out there.
Yeah. They were invited, and they chose to come. So in that, when they came, they went in that system. So you'll find a lot of Jamaican nurses in London, especially, and like Birmingham. So and they got their kids into that, and then the Africans came over. Around that time, same with the Jews. They started off with not so great jobs because their qualifications weren't recognized here. And now we're the, let's say, second and third generation of those Africans that came. So now I would say we should use what's happened before to educate ourselves as black people to make sure that we also get a safe place in this environment. Because you asked, how do we get feel safe and how do we feel supported? And I think that's the only way, because at the end of the day, no one else is going to do it for you.
No,
so we need to create strongholds of our own that also are inclusive and not separatist and have a footing in the country, basically. That's what I believe.
That's very true. Yeah. And I agree with your points. But I also think something that sometimes people overlook is that as well as there are, within racism, negative stereotypes, there are also stereotypes that sometimes work in favor of certain races. So I read... there's a book called Freakonomics, which
I've read that.
Which great book. But there's also another book which I've completely forgotten what. It was Freakonomics, and the author Stephen J. Dubner also has a podcast where he was talking about this, and he interviewed a lot of people. There is this notion, there is sort of positive stereotypes associated to certain races, and sometimes that feeds. There's this notion that.
Do you want to give an example of one?
I'll give you an example of that. Jewish people are good with money. Or
Chinese people are good at maths.
Or that Chinese people,
black people are good at sport.
Or Japanese people, Korean people, like sort of Central Asia people are good at maths or are good at engineering. And because of that, so people say it and kind of sometimes people make fun of it and laugh about it. But then what happens is if you are at Google and you are looking for an engineer and you get a CV array and you get a couple that sound like they're Asian names, that bias, whether or not you wanted to play into it, that bias, you're looking thinking, you're probably looking at their grades, but you're thinking, they're probably good at maths. But that's the thing. Like, there's been like, skits about kind of where I think there was one in like, I think Family Guy, where there was like a black guy and an Asian guy. One of them was a maths teacher and one of them was like an Uber driver. Yeah. And it was the black guy that was a maths teacher. And then literally the whole joke of it was just like, the main character was like, oh, well, that's surprising. You're Asian and you're not good at maths. But it's those type of things where these stereotypes sometimes do play a bias into getting certain races into certain places. And that's not to say that listener takes nothing away from the fact that Jewish communities absolutely have done the right thing in terms of invest their money and invest their energies into themselves. And that is something that I believe other people should do. But also, I think other races should do more of is be inclusive.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, we live in a country, whether or not, yes, obviously I was born here, I'm very much as British as the next person who is British, but we live in a country of all other races. Right. So you have to be inclusive of all other races.
You have to.
You don't have to, but it's good. You don't have to, but I think you should.
You should.
Because at the end of the day, if someone's talented, they're talented. If you vibe with someone that's a friend, you vibe with them as a friend. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, I think you should definitely be inclusive. You should always keep your footing though. Because at the end of the day, worst case scenario, when you go to that club or when you go to that job interview, you're going to gravitate towards each other because you have more in common. It's just a natural thing.
Just plain devil's advocate here. But do you think that's that having that thought at the back of your head? Because I'm just wondering, again, I'll never know this because I don't have the experience of being a white person. But I can't ever imagine white people being like, I must keep my own away from obviously white people who aren't racist. Right? Like I must keep my own away. Or they go into a bar or a situation and be like, I vibe with that other white person because they're white and they understand my experience of being white. I can't imagine that that's a process that goes through their mind.
As you were saying, when you go to the job interviews, and sometimes there's an array of CVs, there's different names. There could be someone called Sadiq, Abana, Yuande, John.
Okay.
9 times out of 10, I'm telling you, the white person say the white person is the interviewer, they are more likely to choose those white CVs. And if anybody says, if those white names, that happens all the time. Yah was on here last. Let me just say this point. No, can I just say something? Let me finish my point. Let me finish my point.
Saying that almost all white people are.
No, I didn't say. No, I said more. No, I didn't say they are 100% going to choose John.
You said more than likely.
More likely, which is not 100%. And then two. There has been recruiters like hubs and meetings where that has been said. And certain people with these ethnic names, you said it yourself in the beginning.
I did.
With these ethnic names,
but
sometimes even...
Some.
Did I say all?
You said all.
Now let me finish.
They are more.
I'll
let you know with evidence why it's more often than likely afterwards.
I'll let you land.
But they've been told to maybe change their name a bit. Maybe don't put this here. Don't put that here. And we've not all been to the job center, but a lot of people have been to the job center where they've been told to do those things, right? And then also the proof of that is when you do go into the job world. As I said, when I went to Google, I saw the CVs that were coming in, right? And I was only a contractor. When they were coming in, Asians, blacks, whites, everyone, but the majority of the building was what?
Why?
When you went to where you went to, where you work.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I'm sure you see people bringing their CVs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there a different array of people? Are they more?
No. See,
I'm just asking.
This is why I think I disagree because for me, the CVs that I see are more. Well, I can't say white because again, from a CV, I can't say that.
But we remember the names.
If your name is Rebecca Smith, I have no idea. But when I buy the names, they are more English sounding names, and therefore I associate them to be more white. But that's because for me, again, for me in the
and then let me just make this point after this. Let me just make this point after this.
Go on.
Is the name Bain that Joanna the Bain?
No, Bain.
No, I know Joanna's business is Shine
Media, but I think the Bain.
She obviously saw that issue. I'm gonna say that. I'm not gonna say in the industry. So she started that business, right? So if she's starting that business, that means there's an issue
But no
in
one-
the system
no
because
one has denied that,
no, but you were saying that the evidence doesn't necessarily show that.
no,
But
that's not what I was saying.
No, that is what you said.
Okay,
because
hold on.
because
So
you
what- I
said
can tell you what I said.
but you said
Moses,
not all-
hang on.
You said not all the CVs. You said, let me just say this point. You said no.
Before you depart this scene, just hold on for a minute. What did you actually say?
Yeah,
there?
say what you
The
said. Jules.
issue is there. There is a lack of
Okay.
diversity in many. What you're
Right.
saying is that.
No, I want to know what you're saying.
No, that's what she said.
No, what I'm saying is that
And
the
then
issue is there, but there are many
Yeah.
reasons why the issue is there. What he's talking about is just the CV name thing.
Yeah.
What I told you about me
Yeah.
working in media was more to do with the background of the opportunities that you can't intern for free if you're not coming from a
No,
background
I
that
get
allows
that.
you.
I get
That
that.
has
Hold
nothing
on,
to do
but
with
hold on,
CV.
hold on.
No, but there's a lot of black people that can't intern for free.
Let me finish.
There are a lot
Let me
of black
finish.
people that can
Okay, let me come in there. May I interject?
You may.
Sorry, please. Referee, call your...
So I hear what Moses is saying
Uh-huh.
because if you look at statistics, there are more people from the ethnic minority backgrounds who go to university than their white counterparts. However, that does not reflect in the job space. So
And in the statistics as well, more black people get 2-1s
Or higher.
or higher than any other ethnic group.
so then you're thinking, what's going on here?
Okay, let me ask you this then. So, Asian people
Yeah.
have professional jobs also.
Yeah,
Not everyone.
No, but yeah.
What do you think the reason is why? Do you think it's the same problem with the CV situation, that they see a name that reads like it's an Asian person? Do you believe that that's the reason? Like, what's the reason why they get hired?
They get hired because I think personally a lot of the positive stereotyping that you were saying,
Okay. So
and then that can I just say something?
Okay.
And with that positive stereotyping, because the English wasn't coming there, that you said stems back to what I said about the divisions of the races.
categories.
Yeah, because the Mongoloids were said to have bigger brains.
Yeah.
They get higher IQ scores.
Yeah.
And I hope we get to go into the IQ scores a little bit today.
Well, you can go into it now.
Yeah, okay, good.
Because we need to wrap up very
Okay.
soon.
But
So,
my point was just that the
let me just
whole
finish that point,
diversity
sorry.
thing was multi-factors. It's
No,
not
I get
just
what you're
one
saying.
thing of it's just the CV or it's just that you can't afford to do interns because you don't come from a rich...
Yeah.
Like, there are many factors.
Many
That's
layers,
the whole point
yeah.
of it being systemic.
But this is one of the
racism.
main factors, though. That was
Okay.
one of the main factors. Now, with the positive stereotyping with the East Asians,
Yeah.
that was a lot of the categories in that scientific study, right? So, and then obviously a lot of them do their IQ test and get high scores. A lot of them go to schools and get high scores, right? But then with black people, for example, the Negroid, they were put in the middle of that scale.
Right.
And when they go to school, they also get high grades. And then also their IQ scores are high, but manipulated by the system.
Right.
And I was saying this the other day. One, there's a statistic, and I hope that when we get time, I'll send you the link to put it in the description
Right.
of the YouTube of the study. But there was a
great plug, by the way.
I know, right?
It's like you're paying him or something.
So it's just basically a study, a research paper. So it's quite short, so you won't be bored. Basically, what it was is IQ tests of different ethnicities. See, I'm falling into the trap in the country, basically the UK, right? So we had English, Welsh, Scottish, Irish traveller. And I think I said Irish as well. So those were the categories for the white people. The black people were black African, black Jamaican, mixed race, right?
Just black Jamaican, not black Caribbean.
Sorry, black.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
Caribbean.
Go on.
no, you're right. Black Caribbean,
Yeah.
black African,
Mixed.
and then mixed,
Yeah.
right? And then you had Asians. They also put them into categories of Bangladeshi, Indian,
Right.
Pakistani.
etc.,
Okay,
etc.
yeah.
Jewish as well.
Yeah.
Ashkenazi, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So now they put the scores next to each one. They put, I think the English kids got 95, Irish traveller got 88, let's say Scotland got 96, etc. Right?
Okay.
We get to the black Africans, I think it was 94. And then you get to the Caribbeans and it was 96. So, etc. And the Asians ones was quite high as well, like in the hundreds, right? So then now everyone's been put into categories, yeah, and everyone's got their score. So back to your positive reinforcement, if you're hiring someone for a job and this research came in front of you, be like, oh my God, the Asians are getting 105. I need to hire some of those.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Going back to showing systemic racism, even in the report, right? The black kids, the Africans, example, and the Caribbeans, because when you corrected me, that's why I love it when you corrected me on the Black Jamaicans and the Caribbeans.
Yeah.
They didn't categorize like they did with white English, white Irish. White Irish, Irish traveler. So in the Africans, they if you go further into another study,
all one together,
exactly, you go. But when you go further into the study, it clearly says, obviously, Ghanaian, Black, Nigerian, and even the Nigerians, it goes into Igbo, Yoruba. Exactly. And then when you look at the scores there, like the Igbos were getting 105, same as the Chinese. The Ghanaians were getting...
But the overall average, because the group was condensed.
Yes. I like how you're finishing it for me.
You can see your thought process. I'm tracing.
You're tracing it. So the Ghanaian kids got 100. The Yoruba kids, I think, got 98. But the Congolese got like maybe 70. Right. And other Black African schools were there as well. But as you said, the average came up to the 94. Yeah. So if we were to average the 94 with the 88s that the Irish travelers got, it's even less of a score than the Black African kids. But what they've put in the report is this clear information. Now, if I'm not working for a think tank, or if I'm not a researcher, or if I'm not a journalist that's diligent, and I get this paper in front of me, Black people are in the middle of this range. Chinese people are at the top. White people are slightly above Black people. Now I'm an executive at Google or Facebook. Papers come in front of me. Who are you hiring?
I don't think anyone's denying that racism within this country exists.
No, you said anyone. As you would say, some people deny it. They say, "What are you talking about? This country is great. Like we're all friendly."
And among this table, no one is denying that. Absolutely, outside in the world, there are a lot of people that deny it. I mean, recently we just had this interview with I think his name is Lawrence Fox. I think he's the brother of. He's basically, he comes from like a famous like media family, I think, called the Foxes. And it was on a BBC, I think, Question Time. An Asian lady posed a question to him, but in her posing of the question, she had said the line, "In your white privilege." And that was a line that got him. Like he was outraged. And I think, anyway, as a result, there's many events that have happened afterwards. And as a result, he came out the other day and said that he's going off Twitter because he's been hounded and da-di-da-di-da about it. But in the time that it happened, he very much stood in his ground, and as Black people say, he said it with his chest. He said it with all his chest that he doesn't understand why that, everyone keeps talking about white privilege. In fact, he feels that he's being marginalized, and he feels that people are being racist towards him by saying that he's got white privilege. And he stood absolutely 100 steadfast in his opinion that racism in the UK doesn't really exist. And it's the same thing that Piers Morgan says over and over again.
Piers Morgan does it all the time.
That racism doesn't exist. It's essentially a figment of the imagination of ethnic minorities. And they say it all the time.
Because a lot of them don't really understand what it is.
They don't understand the layers of racism. They believe that racism really only is.
So how would we make them understand?
But it's not our job to make them understand.
Hold on, why is it not our job? Listen,
I'm half and half of this.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, because there's a popular woman in America called Amanda Seales, and she always says this. Why is it my problem to make you understand a situation in your own country of how certain people in your country who look like you?
Hold on. See, the reason I'm asking this question is, and again, I'll bring it back to the Jewish community. Okay.
They seem to be the benchmark of this.
Right, of course. They are minorities.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they're a minority.
I can assure you that a German person will know what anti-Semitism is.
Okay, I don't know a lot of Germans, but I get what you mean.
I can understand the overview of what you're trying to say.
So what I'm trying to say is this. So if we can come up with a clear definition for people to know that if you go over this, it's purely racism. And for people
we
to
say it all the time, and
no, we don't.
Yeah, we do.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
So are you telling me that you think there are people out there that don't know the line of what it is to be racist,
and we should teach them?
Okay, so I'm just gonna. This is literally just the Google translation of racism.
Listen.
Oh yeah, we need that translation.
Hold on. I'm not talking about the in-your-face discrimination.
No, I'm not talking about that
exactly.
either.
Now, anti-Semitism. What do you think the definition is?
I can't tell
being
you.
anti-Semite.
I can't tell you that.
It's in the statement.
To say anything
it's in the word.
No, listen.
Yeah.
Okay, so in that sense, they are protected.
Yeah.
In that sense, they have to be treated differently, and you have to tread cautiously
Yeah.
when you're dealing with
So they
them.
put a blueprint of how to treat
Right.
us.
But then when it comes to other ethnic minorities, especially black people don't have that.
No, but the thing is, just because Jewish people have done it doesn't, number one,
Well, it's effective.
Hold on.
So you can't say it's not working.
Let me finish. It's not 100% because
still anti-Semites
it's
out there.
in Labour, especially,
why?
that put it in their manifesto.
hold on,
So it can't be that effective. It can't be that effective.
Listen, the
If they
moment
put it in their manifesto that, anti-Semitism.
Listen
And
to
when
me.
was that? 2016?
Listen.
I'm not saying it's not good.
Prevention is better than cure, right?
100%.
So if that is out there, okay, everybody's aware.
Yeah.
The moment they get an inkling of anyone saying something against a Jewish person, which they see to
Okay,
be
right.
anti-Semitic, they just flag it out.
Okay, hang on. Let me say this. There are obviously laws against racism because you can
There's
arrest,
loads.
you can call the police and have someone
Someone
be
arrested.
prosecuted for inciting in kind of inflammatory words
racial
against
hate.
racial kind of hatred and things like that. However, what happens is that these racist acts transform into different things. And I'll give you an example. It transforms into school policies being like, you can't grow your hair. Your hair is too wild. You can't have your hair out there.
Even saying it's wild is
They're
racist.
not saying black people cannot or black boys cannot grow their curly hair out. That's not what they're saying. They're kind of transforming they're basically bypassing the laws that are out there to say that your hair must conform to this cut. But this cut that they're talking about is beneficial really only to white Caucasian children and white Caucasian children's hair. So that in itself, you can't necessarily call a police and be like, the head principal has made my black child cut their hair because they only can have it in this style and that's only white people's hair that can do that. You can't call nobody for that. But the police but so it's getting harder and harder to prove these racist acts.
Yeah.
And then also the white paper, I don't think it's bad anyway.
But it's just, but then that's the same thing. I think, I think with anti-Semitism, what you're saying is that because there can be such a clear line of what you can say to be anti-Semitic, you make it quote unquote easier to spot. I think with racism, there are so many different avenues of how people can be racist and how people can be prejudiced against a certain race. It is difficult to just have a blanket rule of everything. Like, as in, if I took my child to school and my child told my kid to cut their hair off, but not, Tommy next door who is like a white kid.
Why is it difficult?
What is the thing?
I don't even agree with the point of anti-Semitism is different from racism.
I don't think it's different.
Yeah.
It's not
It's
different.
not. Okay.
Hate speech is hate
Right.
speech.
Yeah.
Hate
It's
It's not different. The white paper is good, but as Jennifer was saying, you can't cover everything.
There is
And some of the
law.
things is, how come we're not, I don't know all black people obviously, but a lot of black people are, because we've experienced racism, sometimes when we are dealing with other ethnicities, we think before we speak. Because I know a lot of East Asians don't like being called Oriental, for example.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's very rare that you would even say that, or you wouldn't say it at all. And we've put that consciously in our minds. East Asians, I almost messed up there.
Yeah.
Didn't need to write a white paper for that.
No.
And that's what I'm trying to say. So
It's not
we
everything
take,
that you must be told.
yeah.
Did your mom not tell you that when you were younger?
Well,
I'm not saying the white paper is bad, but I'm just saying that it's not our responsibility to educate them on that.
That's true. What is the thing? Did you need to be educated by an Asian person to not call Asian people like racist terms? By Chinese people?
And I'm not saying any other racist terms.
or by Pakistani
No, but then hold on.
You didn't because
but listen,
what that is.
When you've been at the receiving end, you know how it feels. And it's
Right.
easy to connect with somebody from another.
But some white people feel that they've been at the receiving end.
Pardon?
Some white people feel like Jennifer said that
they are
on the
some
receiving
people
end.
do. That's the whole basis of like the left wing. That's the
So
whole
you
basis
treat
of, like,
me badly, then you want me to educate you on
why
how
you
not to
shouldn't
treat me badly.
Don't get me wrong. I stand on both sides in that because also I do think that if you want to ask a question about
That's fine.
I'm more than
IHRA.
happy to answer questions
I'm just trying
that
to get
people
this
don't
out.
know or that people want to know about.
Yeah.
I am more than happy
but
for
that-
anybody,
that-
any
yeah,
race
if you-
to come to me and be like,
exactly.
oh, I heard this about, and if I can educate in that way. But if you are aggressive towards me, or if you are the one that
And you are entitled. It's like entitlement for for me to teach you.
and then you feel like, well, you never told me.
Piers Morgan once again.
Why
he said
why
that.
must a black person go on to Good Morning Britain to teach Piers Morgan not to be racist.
Or even the Prime Minister not to call people pickaninnies.
As a grown, educated man, why must somebody teach you? Because is it not the same books that I must read to know not to call a white person this thing, to know this and this about our shared history? Is it not the same
It's
book
your
that is
responsibility.
available to you and to everybody else that I then take myself to read? Is it so? Why is it that we can educate ourselves on our history, on other people's history, on our shared history as a human race, but yet
hang on.
I must now do double the work and teach you as well as teach myself?
I don't listen. What the question I asked, I think we've gone round and round in circles.
Yeah,
And
go
you've
on.
just touched on something to do with history. Okay, how many times did you learn about the Holocaust
Once.
in this country?
Year 7,
Yeah.
year 8, year 9,
Yeah.
year 10. And then when I picked history as a subject, I got to slightly pick
Right.
pretty much throughout.
And how many times did you learn about slavery?
Again.
The real slavery.
Oh, no. So the slavery, the version of that, the transatlantic slave trade.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, within this, I learned that maybe year 8, year 9, year 10. But how many times did I learn about African history pre-slavery?
Hold on.
Never.
Never. Okay, all right.
Did I even know that existed before?
Hold on. No. Okay, so
Part of the systemic
that backs up
racism.
my argument. That backs up my argument. You saying that you don't have to go and teach. It's not up to you to teach them.
How
I
did you
agree.
learn then?
Wait.
Okay.
Hold on.
Sorry,
You
go
didn't
away.
have to go and teach anyone. I understand.
Yeah.
How did you learn about the Holocaust?
They
You learned
taught
about it in
school.
school.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So if African history or slavery, in-depth slavery, is not being taught at school, how do you understand?
No, she said slavery was taught in school.
Okay.
No.
And then also,
wait.
okay, let him finish.
Let me finish.
With us two on this today, I don't think he's gonna.
Listen, they telling us about slavery from their perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, we
Correct.
know exactly what happened. So if they don't understand what our ancestors went through, how do you expect them to treat us any different?
What do you mean they don't understand?
They don't, because they haven't been taught about it. Then
have been taught about
no,
it.
They haven't. But they've been taught about the Holocaust, so
Yeah.
they know.
But wait, that's from their perspective as well, though. If it's the
No.
same perspective, yeah,
It's not.
Yeah,
It's not.
because it's not a Jewish person that wrote that whole history book about the Holocaust.
It happened in Europe, so
Yeah.
that's different.
Okay.
It happened in Europe.
Yeah.
They are Europeans. They're not Africans.
Who are
So
not-
they understand.
yeah, but the Jews are not
Wait, let me
Jews.
finish.
Okay, anyway.
Don't go there.
No,
Don't
but they're
go-
not
so-
European.
Listen, I'm saying it happened in Europe.
Yeah.
Okay, the Holocaust did happen in Europe.
Right.
Yeah.
They participated in the Second World War.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. They freed the Jewish people.
Right.
They understand, and the Jewish made it.
Yeah.
Took it upon themselves to make sure that part of history does not repeat itself.
So, right.
They were part of the
Many
struggle.
other countries
They understand.
took it upon
But
themselves
we're
to-
here.
Okay.
So
Right.
we're talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of slavery, they were the oppressors. So, of course, certain part of history is not going to be taught in school.
Yeah.
Okay? So now you look at this. You have two kids,
Yeah.
one European,
Yeah.
one African. The European has been taught about his history or her history
Right.
and what happened, including the African, of what happened to the European. The African will have so much empathy towards the European. But then the African's history has been diluted.
Right.
The European doesn't understand, will not have any empathy.
Right.
So how do you expect them
Right.
to treat the African any different?
Okay. Should I answer?
Go.
on.
Okay.
You go.
So you said that they
Don't repeat what I said.
No.
Just give me
I
the
have
answer.
to prefix. I have to
We
prefix.
all heard it, so
We have to
you
just
prefix.
give the
No.
answer.
Let me just. You said no. Basically, they've taught one aspect of our history from their perspective, as you said, and they haven't taught another.
Just give me the answer.
Let me just say my point. And they haven't taught the other perspective, which was, as you said, pre-slavery, etc. Right? So how are they going to see us different? Because they've chosen to only teach that part of slavery.
Right.
Whose choice was it just to teach that part of slavery?
What do you mean, whose choice?
Whose choice was it?
The government.
The government, they have...
Okay,
yeah.
good.
They write
So,
the curriculum.
yeah, good. So at the end of the day, the black person that you're saying that should teach them about maybe our other facets of history, which we probably do, is still not our sole responsibility, because we also learn stuff about their history on our own as well. And that doesn't get taught in schools.
I don't know. Mate, I'm
Okay,
lost.
no, hang on.
Why are you lost?
No, hang on. So basically, I think what the point of that is, you now as an adult know more about your black history, more
Yes.
outside of slavery. You know that slavery in the timeline of black people, as we know them, is quote unquote a blip on the timeline. You know about, the Mali Empire. You know about a lot more of your Black history. That wasn't taught to you at school.
No.
You also this is a massive assumption. You also know more than just the, World War I and World War II that was taught to you of, let's quote, Caucasian history. And, in terms of the, invasion and kind of colonization of India. Right. Again, you went out on your own, of your own volition, to do research.
No,
let me talk about myself then.
Okay, all right.
Wait, this point is going around in circles because it's not our responsibility.
I'm not saying it's your responsibility.
To teach them not to be racist.
No,
I'm not Asian, but I've gone and taught myself about Asian history and the part that Britain played in Asian history. But I also taught myself before Britain got involved.
And I'm not saying the white paper is not good. I've repeated that many times.
What made you want to go and find out?
Because I just wanted to know, because I knew that it couldn't just be this thing that I'm being taught about Britons being in India. And there had to be more to it. And I went to find out.
Right.
But you're saying that they should teach it, but they're the ones that pick and choose what gets taught. So they're not going to teach you something that's going to make you feel great, are they?
Racist white people, not like how not to be racist.
Hold on, I'm not saying, no. I'm not saying we should teach them how not to be racist.
Okay.
I can never say that. If somebody hates you because of the color of your skin,
but
they hate you. That's not what we're talking about.
Okay, well, you said we should teach them though.
No, I'm not saying we should.
I like how you said you said. So you can say you said, but
if there's a clear definition, okay, of Black people, how we feel
that we should be treated,
or if you cross this line, this borders on racism. Okay? Because at the minute, it's a bit of a grey area to them. Okay, it's a bit of a grey area to them. So if the Jews can have a blueprint, why can't we have a blueprint?
I'm not saying we can't have a blueprint, but I'm just saying it's
why
not.
Shouldn't we?
Wait, but I'm just saying my main point is it's not our responsibility.
Listen, it's not. Well, the Jewish can say it's not their responsibility.
No.
Listen, they realize if they didn't do this, history is likely to repeat itself.
When the Black community and others who can see racism for what it is, see when it happens. I'll give you an example. When H&M had that campaign with the boy, people, H&M were called out on that. People demanded change. Again, when I think it was Moncler and I think Gucci also had an incident with racism. And even for the Gucci situation, it went further than just social media calling out them. People actually asked for real change where Gucci had to put in place a whole department to check themselves so things like that didn't happen. So it's not that it's not happening. What I'm saying is that the comparison between Black people and Jewish people, I think people need to be very careful about that. Right. Yes, we are both ethnic minorities in that sense, in this country anyway.
In this country,
in our own countries, we're not. But in this country, we're both ethnic minorities. Yes. Terrible atrocities has happened to both groups of people. You step into a lot of muddy waters when you start being like, bad. My hurt was worse than you. No, I'm not going to do that. But what I'm saying is, hang on, one had a sustained longer period of time, and people have to remember, because this is also the reason why people are like, why can't Black people just get over slavery? Why can't? Because it happened over there was a whole system to separate fathers from families. It was a whole system over a prolonged period of time, and that sort of hurt, that sort of damage doesn't go away, especially when overnight. The systems are still in place in very subtle ways, in ways that you can't put a blanket law to cover those ways. Because let's say for this situation I'm talking about, that me being the only Black person in my office, or not currently, but me being the only Black person back then or whatever. What law who am I going to call to say, I am the only Black person in this office, somebody do something about this?
It's on the white paper.
It's on the paper. I'm just saying, there are, when you're saying that there are straight things that people can
No, we're not trivializing this. I gave you my point on the paper.
But I lose my change of thought.
Yeah.
Go on.
Again, and I'll come back to the white paper. If the white paper is there, everybody's aware of it. I can assure you, people will think more about their actions before they act, because they know if you take it up to, I don't know, if you report it, it will be taken more seriously than it currently is. So let's not.
I'm giving my view on the white paper. It's not a trivial thing. It's just
it's not that you can make the comparison.
Yeah.
Yes, the Holocaust happened to Jewish people.
Yes.
Not solely, but the reason I think which is maybe why the white paper, let's call it, is maybe more effective. And I'm just speaking an opinion. Is the World War affected people who weren't Jewish. It affected everything. So when people wanted to write something down to make sure it never happened again, I can't say that their motivations were solely just because Jewish people wouldn't be vilified again. But the World War, like the name states, happened and caused troubles for many other groups of people, including white people.
No, but
so for them not to want it to happen again, they have a vested interest in that. When slavery happened, it really only affected black people in a negative way. The white people that were the slave owners benefited from that.
They were living their best life.
Happening. It wasn't the vested interest of other nations or other races to stop that from happening, because at the time it was benefiting them.
Yeah.
So the same way that you're trying to say that, but people are anti-Semitic, because what came with it, what people remember from that is the World War of where people
Not necessarily.
in this country, families were split up, the bombings were happening.
Even what you were saying about
all of them. I'm just saying that this is why you can't make direct comparisons
with the white paper,
the Holocaust. That's what I'm saying. That
with the white paper,
factors to play in it.
With the white paper, in a sense, maybe we're looking for solutions anyway. So it's good to speak about the white paper.
Find it on this table tonight. I would be so proud of myself.
That's fine, because the white paper in a way also reminds me of the Civil Rights Bill in America.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So it might not be a white paper, but it might be a piece of legislation that we put together, a bill, whatever. I agree with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it will bring people's attention to it more, and it's more in the system.
And that's what I'm asking for.
No.
That's what happens in America.
Listen, you're saying that's what you're asking for. That's why.
No, but we're not in America.
When
we're
you're
in the UK.
What I'm saying is that we have a living
Jennifer, racism
laws, but it still happens.
Racism still happens in America.
There's laws
the
against
policies.
criminals,
Let me just finish this point. The policies that were brought in via the civil rights movement protect a lot of black people today and protect their lives today.
Yeah.
And also the segregation that was there before doesn't exist anymore.
To an extent.
Yeah, but like enshrined in law.
Enshrined in law.
It doesn't exist.
It's a criminal offense.
No, but
people still don't get housing.
No, listen. But it made a change.
It did make a change.
And then also, the other minorities that were in that civil rights bill, because like Jewish people, Asians, Native Americans, and all those people as well were segregated as well.
Irish people as well.
Yeah, Irish people as well.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Jewish people weren't even allowed in Beverly Hills, which is funny now because they own all of Beverly Hills. White paper or not, legislation or not, I think that these subtle things that we're saying, maybe it should be put down into something like the civil rights bill, so people can have more attention on it, because maybe because when you brought up the white paper, I said it is not a necessity for us to educate someone, but if it reduces our suffering and our burden, I don't see an issue with a bill,
you're
a
Christian,
paper,
right?
or whatever.
You're a Christian.
Yeah.
And you're a Christian as well. You know stealing is bad, right? But what does the Bible say? Thou shalt not steal.
It's written down.
It's written down.
But it doesn't say thou shalt not steal from the grandmother and not touch her afro. And no. But because you know why? Do you know why we were talking about the blanketness of it? Because there's so many things.
Of course, I know there's so many. But we've got to start from somewhere.
Yeah, obviously, 100% agree with that.
We agreed to disagree.
No, we didn't disagree. We all agreed.
We got there in the end. Okay,
while we have an agreement, while we have an accord, we should probably
let me read this message and get quick thoughts from both of you, and then we wrap up. So Joyce was saying, is Britain really racist? From someone who grew up in France until I left to come to study at uni in the UK, I strongly say no.
Okay, so my thoughts on that are, I think, because a lot of people in America view, and this I'm just don't say about America, but I'll get to the France point. A lot of people who are in countries with worse overt racism or who experience worse racism always look at the UK, because I've read this in like American blogs, and they're just like, I don't know why Black British are always like talking about racism. They know nothing about racism. Just because I slap your face lightly and I didn't slap your face fully, it's still a slap.
It's a slap.
So just because it's not necessarily as over, like, you know, the police in this country are not killing people on camera, black people on camera like they are in America. And I understand what you're talking about France, because I've been to France and experienced, and Portugal and experienced very overt racism, as in people standing and pointing at you.
Calling you
and calling that type of racism. Just because it's not necessarily here, and again, it's more subtle. People, or especially sometimes black people outside of the UK, tend to have this view of like, the grass is greener over there.
Yeah.
Of course there's no racism. But that's not the case. We live in a different type of racism, but it's still racism. And I think, and I'm glad obviously that she's come over here and not experienced, but it's because probably she's toughened to it.
It's a lighter load.
It's a lighter load.
worse.
Because it was worse
Worse
outside.
there.
But it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist here for the people that live here. It exists, but it's just because you had it worse elsewhere.
Yeah.
When you come here, you like, ooh,
relief.
Right. They only just don't employ me here. Before they were fully out here just throwing stones at me. Like, because it's lighter, or because what in their view, it's always in comparison, because in comparison to what they've experienced before, it feels lighter. They always have this idea that it just doesn't exist. But that's not the case.
Yeah. And I would love to say this to Joyce as well. Even our prime minister has put out racial slurs.
Yes.
So to say that country doesn't have a racist tinge is
incorrect.
Yes, Jennifer.
No, because even that, we look at institutions.
Because
so for instance, let me bring it back to football. So in the football, majority of the football players are black footballers. But let's look at it when it comes to managerial positions. Coaches. How many?
Executives.
How many? Non-existent. So
Boris Johnson said pickaninnies.
Yeah.
I'll say it clearly. Pickaninnies with a watermelon smile.
Yeah.
Pickaninny is a clear racial slur.
Of course.
Watermelon smile. I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah.
But this is the system we're living in.
We said more than that.
No, that's I just stopped there. I said stop there.
But so this is what I'm saying. So someone like Joyce, obviously, if she hasn't in this country experienced any racism, that is the dream. That's the ideal. If that's her experience,
That's good.
I only wish for that to continue. For her never to have experienced it. But that doesn't take away, and this is why I think also other people who are not black, it doesn't take away that people have very real experiences of racism in this country. So I think if it doesn't happen for her, it hasn't happened for her.
Thank God.
Wonderful. We literally thank God for that. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Just because I don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
And we're kind of also on the news.
All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in on the Logic Box today. We're done. We say thank you to Jennifer and also Moses. We got there in the end. Hopefully, you've learned a thing or two from our discussion here today. We'll probably have to do a part 2 because I feel like we need to really...
if I'm ready
See,
for that.
this is why we can't have the paper. You see that? Because it'd be too much things. Or we could make it concise.
Yeah, exactly. This is the 21st century.
Yeah,
we can make it very concise.
I mean, we didn't even talk about racism amongst black people.
So
that may be part two.
If we didn't have a sound issue, we'd have probably gone into that as well. But again, thank you for staying with us and tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go onto our social media platforms and follow us across social media. We're done for another day. We'll see you next week. Bye.